Okay, so tell me then, what was your childhood like?
I really feel fortunate. My childhood was just about as magical as they come, in terms of having two parents who really loved and adored me. I had an older brother and two younger sisters, and we moved around a lot, which had its challenges, but my parents interacted with that experience, that way of life, in such an adventurous, fun way that we just,
Hmm.
in our younger years, I can speak for myself. I felt like it was just what people do. It just felt like the normal way to live, to pack everything into boxes every couple of years and get to the other side, to the new place, and be like, "Ooh, I wonder where my room is going to be in this house," and oh, can we walk to school, and where are all the kids in the neighborhood? And then you unpack your things and unwrap the paper that each item has been packed in, and it just felt like Christmas. And mom did such a great job of making every house or apartment or townhouse, wherever we were, feel like home. And we lived in a simpler, quieter age, the 70s and 80s is
Yeah.
when I grew up. So we had
Did you
like
move
a lot.
around a lot because of your dad's job, or was it okay?
Yeah, dad was in the army. So he was
Okay.
in the army for 20 years until I was almost finished with high school. And yeah, so we were outside all the time, a lot of the time, because there were like one to five channels on TV, and we had one television that was like a big box in the middle of the living room. So it was just a really fun uh, time, I think, to grow up and getting to explore different places and communities. It got harder, of course, after about sixth grade. You start to care more about leaving your
Yeah.
friends and fitting in and all of that. So the childhood days were really creative and playful and fun. And then my high school years were on the darker side in terms
Yeah.
of me personally just feeling displaced and uh, unsure of who I was and how I wanted to be,
Yeah.
or what were the rules, what were the social rules, and I was very shy, and so that was a challenging time. But
Do you have a
overall,
fond memory as a child, like one in particular that you really remember?
I have so many. One of my favorite memories is the day that we arrived in what was then West Germany, and I was just about to turn 10 years old. And we lived in Germany then for 4 years. Um, but my dad had already been there for a couple months getting acclimated. And so he picked us up at the airport. We're all wearing matching red t-shirts and white shorts because my mom didn't want to lose us the journey. And in my memory, our dad met us at the Frankfurt airport with a massive clear trash bag full of gummy bears. But in now as an adult, I'm like, it probably was a small bag, but in my mind, in my memory, it was like this garbage bag full of candy. And when we arrived at our apartment building, I still remember the way it smelled, like they had just refinished the wood, or cleaned the wood floors, and there were old radiators, and there just had a particular old building smell. And my dad had all the bikes put together ready for us. And of course, you land and it's like 7 in the morning and you've been awake all night. But I just remember getting on our bikes in that apartment building parking lot, and it just felt like, oh my gosh, this is going to be so fun. Such an adventure. So that's one of my favorites.
Is there something your mom or your dad said to you that you still remember very vividly and like is something you've applied to your life or something that is an encouragement to you even now?
Yeah. And again, I feel lucky they've handed down a lot of wisdom. Um, One thing that really stayed, I think the things that really stay with us because they hit us at the right time when there was emotion connected,
Yeah.
And I remember my mom saying to me once, You are not responsible for other people's feelings. You are responsible to be honest and kind. And I think I've only really started to live that the
That's
last few
hard.
years. It's
Yeah.
very hard. I definitely did continue to feel responsible for other people's feelings for a lot of years. In fact, it's really been the last couple of years I think that I've gotten clearer on that. But but I think the fact that she said it gave me permission to hold it and wait for that to sink in, you know. And
Mhm.
so that was important. Um my dad, think I was actually an adult by the time this moment happened, but I had had a really terrible performance experience where I just felt like I'd failed in such a big way. And I said, I don't want to talk about it ever again. I don't want to see any video of that. I don't want to think about it. I want to forget that happened. I want to get in a cave and just curl up. And he said, you know, the only way to really fail, though, is to never swing the bat, to just stand there holding the bat in your hands and let the balls fly past you. As long as you're swinging, you're in the game, you know? And I was like, no, that actually really helps me right now. And so that's been something I've carried forward.
And then, like, if you were gonna write about your life from your
Mhm.
childhood till now, and you were gonna write an autobiography about it, I know you wrote almost a devotional of sorts last year.
Mm.
Um, but if you were to write an autobiography about your life that you wanted to share with other people, what do you think you'd call it?
Oh man. That's such a good question. Hmm. Can't think of anything like clever or catchy this quickly. But I do know that a couple years ago, when I first started thinking about writing prose or writing long form, and I haven't gotten past, you know, one page pieces, that's my limit
Yeah.
so far. But I remember thinking, I want to write something, and the title would be Born, would just be called Born. And the reason for that at the time was I was feeling that I was kind of midwifing myself into like a new version of myself, like I was being born through me. And and I think in a sense there's so much to that word, you know, as a words person, I think we are really every morning we emerge from sleep and there's this sense of being born into a new day.
Yeah,
And
that's
what
true.
kind of, you know, how will I live this life of this 24-hour life? And then, of course, in the spiritual circle, there's the born again phrase that's really important. And yeah, so I think there's a lot I could play with that word, you know, in writing about myself. But I don't know. I'm going to give that more thought for sure.
Do you think you would want to? Or because I know
What?
I've talked to some
Yeah.
people and they'll say, no, I prefer to keep my life private, which I can understand.
Hmm.
Um, is that something you're interested in?
My reasons for not currently, I mean, I never say never because I keep doing things I think I thought I wouldn't do. But um, I my two reasons that I've said no when friends or family have asked me about that are one, I just haven't yet enjoyed writing the thought of writing long form. Every time I have sat down and tried to like start thinking that direction, I something in me just is like, "Ugh, don't like it. Like I don't know if it's the commitment, fear of committing to such a long, you
Yeah.
know, I don't know. Um, and then my second reason for not wanting to write like auto an actual memoir or autobiography is I I revisit my life to draw insight, and I can
Mm.
certainly share stories and do frequently to illustrate an idea. I don't find joy in living in the past. I don't spend much
Okay.
time. So so I feel that to write an actual long form book about your life requires you to really spend so much time like
Yeah.
getting back in there, reimagining the details, what are the and it just doesn't really interest me. I'm more interested in today and tomorrow
Now,
getting
is the
back.
past, it's kind of like for you, you've been there, you've learned, and so now you move on? Or is it too painful to keep looking at mistakes or areas where you've seen growth? Or why is the past something you prefer not to go back to?
Um, Again, I think 2 reasons. One, you hit on, you said, I've learned from it. I've already done that. It's kind of like
Okay.
I'm a person who's like excited for new, I want to
Yeah.
see new things. So I'm like, I
Like the
already,
bike in Germany. Yeah.
yeah, exactly, exactly. So I like that. And then I think if there's a pain element, it's not pain over my choices or regrets. I can see those clearly, but they don't
Yeah.
have a lot of pain for me. It's more, I do have some, I'm aware that I have some resistance to nostalgia just because I don't want to feel hurt,
Yeah.
feel sadness. I don't want to feel the sadness of good things past. So there's
Yeah.
probably some avoidance there, but it's not of the bad things, it's of the good things,
Mm.
nostalgia. I've seen many people, I see many people who are very nostalgic and they seem to carry, I don't know, it seems like it's something that can suck people in away
Yeah.
from living. So I don't, doesn't really interest me.
What is something about life now that you find really hard?
Right now. I have to pause because comparatively, I'm in a season where I've come from hard. And so everything's feeling like easier by comparison,
Yeah.
um, easier by the day. It's still hard to be in, I think what is challenging, most challenging for me is accepting the limitations and opportunity losses that I create for myself by being very loyal to my own uh, passions, my
Hmm.
own calling. So I do a lot of things that I feel very passionate about, um, to generate income, and
Yeah.
well, they generate income, and I love them. And then there are things that could generate more income and more exposure and more opportunity that I choose not to do because it's just not lighting me up, or
Mm.
feeling like aligned for this moment. And that, so probably me living day to day, not feeling frustrated about how much I have to piece together. I work hard
Mm.
and it's a lot of different hats and it's very up and down. There's not a salary, there's no 401k,
Yeah.
so we're just reconciling like that. And most artists do have this to some degree, like have to remind myself, I chose this, I am choosing this. At
Yeah.
any point, if it feels too hard, I can go get a regular job. So the instability, I guess, that comes with the life that I choose because it's meaningful to me.
What do you think is the best part of now?
The best part by far is, well, I mean, everything about it is the best part, but I think what really, really works for me is flexibility and change.
Yeah.
I really love that variety. And so I remind myself, because I have done jobs where it's like same office every day, 8 hours, and that is harder for me. So I love, the best part is the freedom to move about as I want to. And then along with that is the relationships that are fostered by doing the work that I do, the creative work. It just bonds you together. Like it creates such special connections. I love that.
Do you find that it does that with your family too? Or
Like creativity or my vocation.
both, actually? Because I guess your creativity comes into your vocation too.
Yeah. Um, the creativity definitely is a big part of our family life, both my family of origin and my current family. Um, yeah, a lot of play, a lot of adventure, a lot of making stuff and singing together. Um, and even just gatherings. that's a part of my work life, and it impacts my kids and always has. They're very used to having a bunch of random people in the living room, like playing guitars or eating food or having dance parties. That's, yeah, it's very much very integrated. I think my work and my personal life very very similar.
And then what do you think, what does life mean to you? Like, what do you think
What
it
does
means to like be alive?
mm,
Which is interesting because you kind of were touching on this when you're talking about Born with your
mm,
autobiography title.
yeah. Ooh, that's a big question.
It is, and I want you to know I don't have something here that says you must say this.
I love it. Yeah, I'm always like, how I know my tendency to ramble, so I'm like, how can you distill your response? Um, at this moment, I see life and being alive um, as it means expanding, um, means openness to expansion and growth in ways that we choose and ways that we don't choose. Um,
And how are you, what is that for you right now? What are you growing in?
I'm growing in my ability to be present and grounded. Um, I'm growing in becoming shedding more and more of my impulse to judge uh,
It's hard. Yeah.
things. Yeah, yeah, and to really practice. And I preach it a lot because I'm practicing it a lot. And I'm not like by any means like enlightened or arrived or whatever even that is means for human beings. But um, practicing like just challenging myself in every moment. Be right here. Don't be ahead or behind. Don't time travel. Just be in this moment, willing to let this moment expand you, grow you.
Mhm.
Um, willing to not judge it as bad or good. You know, if we're on simple things, we're talking about the weather. Like, yeah, I'm learning to have preferences without them being so heavy. Like not taking
Mhm.
myself so seriously. Like
Yeah.
I could prefer spring and summer, but I used to resist the things that I had decided I didn't prefer. I had great resistance to it, you know, and I spent a lot of energy hating it, hating whatever it was, whether it's cold weather or
Mhm.
certain kinds of people or certain kinds of food or whatever it was, or things in myself, more importantly. And I'm just learning to and practicing. You know, something happened today actually that was like grating on my nerves and I couldn't change the circumstance.
Mhm.
And I was mindful, you know, now I have the ability to watch myself being annoyed, watching myself judge a person's habits or ways, or judging just the way the day feels. And I go, okay, how's that working for you to judge so harshly? How's that feeling in your body? And I'm like, man, that thing is not causing me nearly as much suffering as my anger towards the thing, as my, you
Yeah.
know, resistance. What if I just like stand here and let it be what it is until it's not that, you know? Love it the way it is until it changes. And that's it's really sounds convoluted, but it's something I'm working on.
Well, how do you, if your emotions though get so worked up, how do you calm them down? Just by
Mm,
repeating that to yourself? Or because your emotions sometimes, I know for me,
yeah.
what's hard is like emotions sometimes seem to conquer. So even if you're like, this is the rational thing to do, your emotions are still like, no, I really, we don't really care about that.
Yeah.
So how to get it to the Because even what you're talking about, it's like even trying to feel it not as keenly for things that you don't need to feel so impassioned about. But I
Mm,
guess, do you just over time you've seen that that's your emotions have become less strong on things they don't need to be, or
mm, so good. I think there have been a lot of different tools and ways of coming at it over the last 5 years that
yeah.
have all chipped away at it a little bit, all given me a little bit of more, a little more bit more capacity. Um, and what instigated that was having terrible feelings about what was happening in my life and about the behaviors of other people. And it was so all consuming, and I was so reactive, and I was creating extra damage and suffering in my life, like literally. Like I was so, had so much fear and anger that I was not present. So I was like running into light poles or doing things with my car, like just not handling things in a calm, centered way. And I saw that in other people in my family,
Mm.
that high reactivity that just made whatever the problem was even worse.
Yeah.
And yeah, and so I watched that in myself and others, and I was like, started listening for any tools or any teachers who were offering something that I thought that might help me to be more centered when things are
Mhm.
not going the way I want. And so it's been probably so many different things that have helped. Currently, um, what I'm coming to or focusing on the last, even just the last month, I'd say, is really just the most simple thing that's been preached since the beginning of time, which is just like coming back and paying attention to my breath, like watching my breath come in, watching it go out, and just letting that be the kind of the centering, the object of my attention. And that helps for a number of reasons. One is it's something that I'm not, like, it's happening without me making it happen.
Yeah.
I'm not really, it's happening involuntarily. And when I pay attention to it, it's like one simple point of focus,
Yeah.
um, which helps me. And then by doing that, I start to regulate my breathing. And we have learned through science that, our emotions affect our breathing, but our breathing also affects everything. So when we start doing the shallow panicked breathing, for instance, that can fuel the emotion and the thoughts. So if you can kind of reverse engineer it. And I've had a lot of performance anxiety, so I have paid attention to my breath
Mm.
a lot, going, how can I breathe differently to calm my nervous system? Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, there are a lot of things that have played into it, but I still have this strong reactions. I'm just getting
Well,
a
you
little
said
better
you're
at
practicing. I don't think, yeah, nobody gets
practicing.
instantly better. Yeah.
Yeah, and on a mental front, because I've also come at it that way at times, like challenging my thoughts. Um, and a major insight that someone gave me a few years ago was to have my opinions, have my preferences,
Yeah.
but not mistake that for being me. Like those things can come and go, they can change through the years. That's not like who I am.
Mm.
And when I identify, like if I have a strong opinion and I'm like, I'm a person who doesn't go out in the winter, right? I'm a person who hates winter, then it's like my identity, right? And that is problematic in a lot of ways, because anything
Yeah.
that we make it, if you have a political opinion and you make it like that's who I am, I'm a person, I am this. There's a lot of power in that phrase, I am whatever, as opposed
Yeah.
to I'm a person who at the moment sees it this way. That's different. But if it's our identity and someone opposes it, we have been opposed.
Yes. Yeah, that's true.
And now I'm under threat, and my survival instincts kick in, and I have to defend this at all costs, as opposed to, well, it's just my opinion today. I might get new information tomorrow and have a different opinion.
Yeah.
I am not unsafe. I'm not my opinions. I'm a spiritual being that's separate from these things. So I don't know.
Yeah. Now, how do you? I know you said spiritual being. What does that mean? Like, what does that mean to you? Like,
Well, I believe that we are not just material beings. So I believe that I am a soul,
yeah,
and I'm
okay,
here in having this human experience in this body, but this
yeah,
body's going to go away, but I'm not going to go away. I mean, the essence of me is a soul. And there's a lot of we tend to forget that, and we get so identified with the body. That's why we're
yeah,
so afraid of aging and death and everything. It's like I heard someone say the other day who was older, he's like, "Oh
mhm,
yeah, if I thought this decaying body was actually me, I'd be freaking out too. But it's not me. It's just like a costume,
yeah.
for this experience."
Are you afraid of dying?
I'd like to say I'm not. I don't feel consciously afraid of dying, but I also realize that I can't know that for sure because I haven't come close enough to it.
Mm, yeah,
So in theory, I'm not. And in what I have access to at this moment in my life is there are certain means of dying that have some power to,
yeah,
you know, inspire fear. But that's really fear of pain, not fear of being gone. So,
yeah,
and logically, I always think whatever happens after this life, I happen to believe, tend to believe it's either going to be really good or I'm not going to be a separate conscious being. And if I'm asleep, if I'm basically not, I'm not going to be feeling bad about it. Whatever happens, I'm not going to be feeling bad about it. So I don't really think I need to be scared of it.
Is there an element of nature that you really love and that speaks to you as like a person?
Yeah, I love trees, and I'm not like a, what do they call it, an arborist, or I don't know the names of different trees. I
Yeah.
feel guilty for loving them so much and knowing so little about them.
Why
But
do
I
you
do,
like them?
I've always just feel so safe when I'm in the woods. I don't, it could be any time of day. I honestly don't feel afraid in the dark in the woods. I feel
Oh,
trees feel like tall, stable, steady, ancient, wise um, creatures to me. I'm not saying they are all of those things like sentient or what, but I do, that's how I feel. I feel like I'm with these steady, reliable old beings when I'm in the woods. So
that's a great way to think about it because I'm terrified of being in the woods by myself.
now, so yeah, I wonder what is it in about the woods that scares you?
It might be because I grew up in the city. We didn't grow up near woods.
Which,
So actually live near Philadelphia.
oh, okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, if we went to the woods, and I guess too, my parents were very cautious. So, they always wanted to make sure you be careful of ticks and all of that. So I guess it
Right.
didn't. Whereas my husband has like camped for weeks and he loves it. Loves the woods and feels super confident and safe. And so it's interesting that you say that because I'm like, man, that must be so nice.
Have you gone camping together?
I'm the reason that's taking a while.
Not yet. Maybe sometime.
Yeah, I really do. We tried camping out in our backyard and I made it until about 1 in the morning. And then
Okay.
I went back inside because it was roots kept sticking into my back like in Lord of the Rings, and I was like, "I
Oh
can't
yeah.
sleep in this."
No. Well, to be fair, like we grew up camping. I love camping, but my parents live on 70 acres and my dad's always like, "You can just come camp out here." And I'm like,
Oh,
"That's not going
wow.
to that's not going to work though. I have to be somewhere where I don't have a house as an option because
Okay.
of course a real bed is going to be more comfortable and if I know it's right there, I'm going to go get in it."
You're
But
right. Maybe I need to, yeah, be a little more adventurous and it needs to be
go farther
farther
away and
away.
get a good air mattress maybe.
Yeah. No, yeah. I know
But
what
yeah,
you
I
mean.
think when I was growing up, our household was always very full of people. We had 4 kids, and my grandmother lived with us. But my mom loved to host things, and people lived with us at different times. So it was always very like robust. And I'm pretty introverted. So even though I love people, so the woods, wherever we lived, it seemed like that was how I'd take a book and go to have some peace and
So it's
quiet and
quiet.
solace.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Is there an animal you think your personality is like?
That's interesting because I I don't know. That would be something I should ask my friends. But I have, in terms of what I've identified with. Um, Last year, I released this song called "The Voice," and it has the image of like a woman roaring like a lion, like because she's like finally letting herself be a little freer, and listen to her own voice. But when I was young, I was so shy in social settings, and when I was in college, at some point, some boy said, he was trying to compliment me, and he was like, "Oh, I have dark brown eyes," and he was like, "You just are like a doe. You're like a gentle, like a deer in the woods." And I like was such a like wanting to be what I thought other people wanted me to be, that I was like, "Oh, that's who I will be. That makes sense. I'm like a deer." And
They're
in
very
the last
fearful.
what?
They're very
Very few.
fearful. Yeah.
Yes, Danielle. And it only was in the last couple years that this. Okay, so this is really interesting. When we moved to Germany, my mom said all of you kids need to choose something to collect so that we can tell grandparents they're not going to see you for a long time. They can send gifts very easily. Just add to this collection. And I don't know why, but I chose the lion. I chose lions. So for years, everybody just kept giving me lions, figurines, stuffed animals, posters, or whatever, just anything with lions. But I kept saying I'm a deer. And then in the last few years, all this work, I kept seeing lions again.
Wow.
Um, and then it just ended up in this song lyric because it was appropriate for what I was trying to say, express. But all of a sudden I was like, "You guys," I told my friends, I'm like, "I'm not a deer, I'm a lion." But all those years I had carried so much fear. And so it was in like doing all this healing work and shedding so much fear, I became born, you know, I, I birthed myself out of the deer fear and
Yeah.
into the strength of a lioness, I guess. So I don't think I carry myself through the world like a roaring lion. That's not really my vibe, but I do like that connection on the inside.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's
That
kind
would
of funny.
also, yeah, I was gonna say that also something you could work into your autobiography title. I don't know how,
Mm,
but yeah, that's really
yeah,
cool.
yeah.
Um,
Kind of.
is there something you still want to do that you haven't done yet?
Hmm. I don't know. I don't know if there's a one thing. I just always have new project ideas, and new things I'd like to try. So there's still more different kinds of music. On the music side, I feel like I'm still like so curious about different sounds. I like a
Mm,
lot of different kinds of music,
yeah.
and because when you haven't ever had like, I mean, I've had hit songs as a writer, but not as an artist. So it's not like I'm bound, like people want me to keep doing what. I mean, I can kind of do whatever I want. So yeah, remember when Mumford and Sons came out with that four on the floor thing, and then they tried to shift courses, and people were like, "Wait, what? This is
Yeah.
not Mumford." But so there are different sounds I'd like to try on that front. I would like to do more writing, poetry or prose.
Yeah.
And there are some different kinds of retreats and things I'd like to explore. I'd like to do more speaking because I really enjoy leading workshops and speaking. That's fun and interesting to me and causes me actually a lot less anxiety historically than music
Oh,
performance.
wow. Okay.
I know it's kind of weird. Most artists I know love to sing their songs, but then between songs, they're like, "I hate having to talk between songs." And I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh, I would get up there and only talk." But
Wow.
yeah, I don't know. I would like
And
to
then
explore.
is there someone you look up to?
Someone I look up to.
Yeah, like someone either who's alive or someone who's passed away that you would like to be more like?
I feel like that's a question that as soon as I get off here, I'm going to go, oh my gosh, what did I say? I'm really drawn to older women in general. Like I always have
Mm,
been. I'm now in the season. I slid into the season where I ended up now being the older one in my friend group, like older sister to big sister to a lot of my friends by like 15 or 20 years, or 25 years. But I've always been drawn to women who are ahead of me by 10 or 15 or 20 years. Um, so I have those women, and there are aspects of them that I really appreciate in their ability to be present and
mm.
not vain, like just free in a different way. But there's not one in particular right now that's standing out to me. Like, I want to be like her. It's just like, I just really appreciate them. I really I'm really drawn to this poet named David White, and
Mm.
he's British, and he's done some of the work he's done is inspiring to me with some things I'm working on right now. So
Mm.
he's kind of one of those people that I'm like, I like. He has taken poetry and brought it into non-artistic circles
Oh,
and
wow. Okay.
shown people how to be more engaged with language and
Mm.
substance and story. So some of the work that I'm kind of exploring with friends right now is inspired by him.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I have to look him up. I don't think I've read any of
Yeah.
his poetry.
It's Whyte.
Okay.
Yeah, and he has a fantastic book called Across the Un or Crossing the Unknown Sea. I For the life of me, I don't like the title because I can never it doesn't stick well enough, but it's something about the unknown sea, and it's a book of not poetry, but it's about his journey and his perspective on what work is meant to be for us, like work and
Mm.
purpose and pilgrimage. And yeah, and that he spent time as a naturalist guide in the Galapagos Islands, so he has all these
Oh,
beautiful
wow.
stories about that. And
Do you have
yeah,
a favorite book?
um, no, I don't think I have a favorite book. I have I have books that have been like beloved to me, but I don't really often reread books
Okay.
unless yeah, I don't reread books very often. If it's nonfiction, like in the self-education sphere, or I might um I might listen to it again. Well, I will say there's one book that was so uh, life changing, well, really pivotal in challenging some of my thinking
Mm.
in 2018, I think it was. That one I have reread, and it's called Awareness. And it's
Mm.
by a guy named Anthony DeMello. He was a Jesuit priest in India. And
Oh,
it's a
wow.
small book, and it's really a transcription of his talks that he gave. So it's super conversational. It's not like you would
Mm.
write the book, but um, that one I'd return to. But I love well written fiction. And so some books that I've read throughout my life have been like they stayed with me, but they're kind of tied to the whatever age I was. And I
Yeah.
wonder if I read them again, maybe I wouldn't like them so much, but they hit the spot at age 25 or 30.
And then I have one last question for you.
Yeah.
Um, do you think there's a piece of music that describes your personality?
Hmm. Um, if I were thinking of other people's music, I'd probably have to like compile a few together, like to um, yeah, because there's so many songs out there that I'm like, oh, that's part of me, and that's part of me, and that's part of me. There's a song that I just released that feels it's interesting because it's kind of quirky. It's not really like my other songs.
Hmm.
Um, it's not as commercial, but something about it feels like really my personality. And it's called Carnival of the Animals. So it was derived from the Carnival of the Animals, which is a
Yeah.
classic piece. Yeah. But I was walking during the pandemic, and it was the first time I had started walking my own neighborhood because I always loved to go to the woods, but the woods are 10 minutes away. So I was trying not to drive and be in public. So I would just walk here. And one day, and I was just having the most beautiful experience of my local community that I didn't know. I didn't know, I had not known the street names. Some of these street names, I had never known so many people sat on their front porches. I live in a real eclectic area. And so many people sitting on their front porches and waving, and then people who would pass you and like not look at you at all. I was just like
Yeah.
noticing everything. And I was listening to this Spotify playlist called Classical Sleep. Still love it. And listening to classical music when you walk through the city, it just makes everything, it changes your experience. You feel like you're in a movie. And so I'm walking and I'm noticing people, and Carnival of the Animals, the Swan Song came on, performed by Yo-Yo Ma. And I'm
Mhm.
listening to that and taking in the scene, and a poem starts emerging in my mind. And I come home and I write this poem, and I think I shared it on my stories on Instagram with some pictures of the sunset and whatever. And then a day or two later, I thought, I wonder what if I took that poem and like let it inspire a lyric. And I was like, "Well, how, what would that sound like?" And I thought, what if it sounded like what I was listening to when I wrote the poem in my mind? Like, what if it sounded like Carnival with the Animals? So I just started playing with that, and it was experimental. But I think lyrically and musically, and that very process that I just described, all of that feels very Krista ish. So that would probably be the one that's like, that says a lot about who I am, I think, in its entirety.
Wow. That's really neat though. Yeah, it's really fun to listen to music when you're walking
Yeah.
in different places. It does. It feels like a story.
Mhm. You just enter in differently.
Well, I
See,
wanted to
see.
say, like, thank you so much. It's been really cool to talk